Hello, everyone. Our next speaker is Danika DeGiulio, and she is the Assistant Director of Information Services at Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company of Idaho. She joined the Zonta Club of Pocatello to interact with like-minded women who want to see each other succeed and become more involved in her community. Danika will be presenting today on leading with intent. She believes every day is a learning opportunity and therefore encourages her team to think strategically rather than tactically to increase our own human capital and their value in the organization. Welcome, Danika.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Go ahead and share my screen. Is everyone able to see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So thanks for giving me this opportunity to present. Intent-based leadership, or leading with intent, is not really a new concept by any means. However, I personally believe that once you discover that mindset, it can have a profound impact on your life and the way you do things, both at work, through Zonta, with your family. When I started with Farm Bureau in 2004, I was that person who thought tactically. I thought, for me, I must obtain a discrete piece of information in order to complete specific tasks. Throughout the years, I think that hindered my abilities at Farm Bureau, but then I was hired into a different department by a gentleman named Adam Waldron, and he said, I think it's time for us to talk about how you can think strategically. He challenged me to realize that merely by having a conversation, I'm getting smarter about the way things work and how different people approach problems. In the process, I started to see that I too was increasing my own human capital and my value in the organization for Farm Bureau, but I think that it applies in Zonta, really. I don't have a screen up, so I don't see questions, so if you end up asking questions, we'll get to those at the end. But when I was interviewed, he asked me one specific question that kind of took me back. He says, "What is your extra?" And I thought, oh man, I'm not really sure how to answer that. And I think he could see that I was nervous. And so he rephrased the question. He said, Danika, average is over. What is your extra? What, in addition to average, will you bring to this team? And I thought, again, still, that's a tough question to answer, because I, like many others, have imposter syndrome and don't always see the value that I have or the value that I bring to specific organizations or tasks, or even to myself. I'm sorry if you guys hear like some banging and pounding. I'm having my roof replaced currently, and there are a lot of people up there running around and pounding with hammers. So I apologize for that. So I had to think about that one. What did I bring different that someone else, or what above average did I bring to this team? So it took me a while. He was nice enough not to force me to answer that question until I was comfortable. But when I joined Zonta, I was not sure exactly what extra I would bring to it. I came into this thinking, oh, I'll just be a doer. I'll just come in and I'll help people do things. And then I'll realize as I go through it, like exactly what this club was about. I started to realize the things that I do every day at work would help me in achieving some of Zonta's missions, help the people in our club recognize that they have an extra, what their talents are. And I think as a team, we will excel and shatter expectations. So we all have an extra, and as a club, it's our job to help each other find that, our communities find that. So how do we do that? I think we have to focus as an organization. We have to teach our clubs and committees, or our committees within our clubs, to think strategically, so that we can accomplish so much more than we expect. In ordinary isn't enough. So I believe through intent-based actions and leading with intent, the things you say you do, the things you say you intend to do, you do them. You keep others informed and involved. You keep your commitments. You stay organized, stay methodical with your strategies. And I think the way that you do that is through an intent-based model. So I think there's a formula to this. At Farm Bureau, we teach our IT teams to use this formula as they're working through their teams. 1, tell people what you intend to do. 2, think out loud. Be clear and concise about what it is that you plan to do, and then allow other people to give you input. So thinking out loud means stating our reasoning and anticipating concerns that may be expressed, as well as acknowledge any risks involved. I think there are 3 things to remember. We can always seek and provide greater clarity when we're working on projects or committees. There's always room for improvement. Number 2, we are all incompetent in one way or another. So thinking out loud and allowing to gather that input, participating in our committees can help us improve. And 3, we have to question. We have to question deeply. We have to question imaginatively, beautifully. By asking questions, it can help us identify and solve problems, come up with game-changing ideas, and pursue fresh opportunities. My boss always tells me questions are a powerful antidote to hubris. And I think that's true. We oftentimes become prideful or self-confident, and we don't listen to what others have to say or the ideas of other people. Makes me think of this book that I read called Turn the Ship Around. It was written by Captain David Marquette. He was at the last minute given command of a ship that was not very successful. He wasn't familiar with the ship, and it just so happened it was the worst performing submarine in the entire naval fleet, which under his command became the best. He's the one who really coined the intent-based leadership. And so this is how it kind of worked out. So rather than him boarding the submarine and giving orders and telling everyone what to do, he took a step back and he listened to his crew. He knew if he told the crew, we need to get to X by Y, they would really know how to do it. He didn't have to spout orders or tell them how to do it. He just needed to trust that they had and knew they had the training to get him there. So with that being said, like some of our club presidents or others who feel like they're responsible for some of the our commitments, he didn't just hand over the reins to the ship and let everyone run amok. He kind of helped them understand and foster an autonomous environment. He allowed that crew to do what they were good at. He allowed that crew to do what they were trained to do. And so here's how it worked for them. So part of the formula, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. We are in water we own. Water depth has been checked and is at 400 feet. All men are below and the ship is rigged for dive. I've certified my watch team. So just with the thinking out loud, that person was able to give the captain all of the information to verify that they were clear to do what they needed to do. They made sure that they understood what some of the risks were and answered the questions beforehand. So giving that captain that opportunity afterwards to give input, but at that time he trusted them. They knew what they were doing. So all he had to do was say very well, and they were on their way. I think that this formula only works if competence and clarity are present. If we lack either, then we must seek out and help others gain it. It only works if our team members or our committees are actively listening and providing feedback. If we falter on the two pillars of competence and clarity, we lose that critical element of trust. And I think that I've seen that break down in some of our local committees where there's not that clarity. There's possibly a little bit of mistrust about how things are going to get done. So making sure that competence and clarity are there so we don't diminish our ability to deliver is important. With that being said, I think when we're starting to plan some of these fundraisers or some of our community actions, we need to really prepare, we need to debate, and then we need to commit. And then creative abrasion will naturally follow. And what I mean by that is creative abrasion was coined by Jerry Hirschberg, the founder of and president of Nissan Design International. It describes a culture where ideas are productively challenged. It is a concept that is all too often seen as conflict instead of constructive. And I think, no offense, but sometimes us ladies get a little bit heated when we're having conversations about how we do things or how things should be done. So creating an environment where opposing ideas grade against each other is greatly successful in fostering innovation. If done in the proper mindset and spirit of teamwork, it forces us to truly evaluate our preparedness, approach, and predispositions. I have a picture of Steve Jobs here on the screen because perhaps he was one of the most popular advocates of creative abrasion in product design. I don't know that we really need to discuss him because I think everyone knows how he challenged the industry to become better. So let's go back to that one. When we're talking about prepare, debate, commit, really, when we're preparing, we need to understand the purpose and content of what it is we're trying to accomplish. We need to have conversations amongst committees prior to taking those ideas to some of the bigger meetings. We need to share facts with our groups, notes, understand some of the processes that are going to need to take place in order to make some of those decisions, and then acknowledge our biases. So I think if we're not all self-aware, that could create a problem when we're preparing for some of these projects. Debate, in our department, we call it Q-tip. Quit taking things personally. Everyone brings something different to the table, and not everyone will have the same idea, which is a good thing. But begin planning from a place of curiosity and respect. As I discussed in prepare, no surprises. Make sure that you're having those conversations prior to those bigger meetings so that people aren't surprised with what you plan on presenting or what the ideas are. Use language of collaboration, asking questions like how might we, or when someone has a suggestion and you think you need to dive deeper, you can use the yes and what if model. Asking people, have you thought of something else? Could we try this? Focus on what you're hearing and not on what you're saying. Listen to understand and not to respond to people. Frame the debate. Make sure that what it is that you're planning with your committees meets the mission, vision, and values of Zonta. Understanding that what your leadership principles are within your group, and then possibly creating some strategic themes around what it is that you want to accomplish. And then in the end, make sure that you're being direct, candid, and factual when you're having those debates. Part of the reason for debate is to expose the flaws in our own mental models and make us better decision makers, collaborators, and stewards for our areas of responsibility. The physicist Niels Bohr once defined an expert as a person who has made all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field. Unless you experience the unpleasant symptoms of being wrong, your brain will never revise its models. Before your neurons can succeed, they must repeatedly fail. There are no shortcuts for this painstaking process. We all know that agreements feel good, and we like it when we can all get along, but it's not best for innovation. Why? Because if everyone has the same idea, then we only have one idea, and we won't be getting it very far. But once we've prepared, we've debated, it's time for us to commit. So confirm the decisions and expectations and outcomes with your committees. Make sure that, like I said, that they meet your mission, vision, and values. And then decide how you're going to get from X to Y and by when. Agree on the message that will be communicated regarding the commitments. Make sure that everyone has that clarity around what it is that you're planning. And then commitment does not mean that we don't pivot. If we discover new information, we need to remain agile. We need to be able to shift into what's best for our communities and our clubs. And then one thing that I've noticed with some of the committees that we have in the Zonta Club of Pocatello, we do a really good job of taking care of people, but there's not a great, always a great handoff when it comes from someone becoming a committee chair to handing that off to another person. So one thought or suggestion that I have for that is that you create handoff checklists. What do you understand are the priorities of that committee? What concerns or ideas do you have that have not already been mentioned in committee conversations? And then asking that new person, what do you need from me in order to be successful? And being there to mentor them through these projects. And then making sure that you have small check-ins if they're excited, if they want your mentorship or they want your help. And then asking the question of the committee, like, who else needs to know our plans? And then making a decision on how we plan on communicating them, whether it's email, GroupMe, or Trello, some of those different things. Just make sure that it's clear that that's the way we're going to communicate it, because I found, or we have found as a club, that if people are sending messages through email or sending messages through GroupMe, the information gets lost in translation, or people don't get all of the information because one person thought that they should be looking in their email versus going to Trello or wherever it is. So I think that's pretty important. And then creative abrasion. I think it's pretty important to understand how we go about engaging and fostering those creative, abrasive conversations. We must be respectful of everyone, which I don't know that I need to tell all of you Zontians this, because you're a pretty amazing group. But I think it's always good to brush up on our emotional intelligence. Being respectful of people's viewpoints that they've developed for specific sets or experiences. For our teams at Farm Bureau, or our team that I work on specifically, we often say where you stand depends on where you sit. It to us really makes sense, and I think that it speaks volumes. We need to understand that everyone we encounter has a different spot in the universe, which causes and allows, I think at sometimes, them to see the world around them in a very unique way. The simple fact needs to be acknowledged and appreciated for its value. Second, we need to force ourselves to zoom out and separate ourselves from our ideas. Just because I have a stupid idea, which a lot of times I do, but to me they make sense, doesn't mean that I as a person am stupid. So again, brushing up on that EQ and making sure that you have empathy for people, because it's not easy to share. It's not easy to tell people what some of your ideas are, because due to imposter syndrome, your fear of failure really shines through. Take time for it takes deliberate performance. It doesn't happen on its own. We must create routines in our committees that foster opposing views, such as maybe appointing someone as a devil's advocate. rewarding proper dissent in the spirit of creative abrasion, and call out when we feel it's not happening, or we're going, or we're getting too far along without it. It takes a lot of work, I know, for a lot of these committees to come up with their ideas and how they plan on fundraising. I sat in on a couple of these conferences and heard some really great ideas that hopefully Zonta Club of Pocatello will decide to adopt. But it's important to be comfortable with the decisions you make, and understanding also, though, that being comfortable means that you're not really growing. So step outside of that box and lean into your discomfort. Do things that are uncomfortable, so that you're making sure that everyone in your club has that opportunity to grow. And what is uncomfortable to me might not be uncomfortable to others. Let's see. So I'll throw out another book here. I don't know if anyone's read this, but Alan Alda wrote this book, If I Understood You, Would I Have This Look on My Face? It's pretty profound. I think what this book really taught me is there's a misconstrued assumption that we all know where a person is coming from before they actually tell us anything. And if you haven't done so already, I would again suggest brushing up on your emotional intelligence, just making sure that you are showing empathy to people when you don't understand exactly what it is that they're saying or trying to tell you. Give them time to explain themselves, and really come up with great ways to have those conversations. Be honest with people, be real with them, and take ownership for the tasks that you have at hand. But again, I don't need to tell all of you this because you're Zontians and you're pretty awesome, and a lot of you have helped me grow in my journey through this club. I don't think that I'll be using up all the time that I have here. But like I said, every one of us are our own little dragon slayers, and meeting these commitments and taking care of the people in our communities and fundraising, it's what we do at this level of leadership. So don't forget what your extra is, and don't forget that there might be someone in your club or in our district that might need help figuring out what that is or how to find it for themselves. I guess I will open it up if people have questions.